Fire was everywhere. Black smoke filled the air, and inside a blazing Ferrari, one man was trapped, screaming, choking, and slowly being cooked alive. That man was Niki Lauda. On August 1st, 1976, at the Nürburgring, the notoriously dangerous circuit,
I just wish we could still race on it today.
better known as the Green Hell, Lauda's car burst into flames after a violent crash. He was stuck inside for nearly a minute in 800-degree heat. When fellow drivers finally pulled him out, they realized that his helmet had come off in the impact, leaving his face exposed to the inferno. He suffered severe burns to his face and head, and had inhaled so much toxic gas that doctors didn't think he'd live through the night, but they underestimated him. What happened next became one of the most
I'm world champion.
unbelievable comebacks in sports history. How did a man who looked death in the eye return to the grid just weeks later to reclaim his crown? Niki Lauda wasn't supposed to be a racing driver. He was born in Vienna, Austria, into a wealthy family who wanted him to take over the family business, not throw his life away in dangerous cars. But Lauda wasn't built for comfort. He wanted to take control of his own life. When his family refused to fund his dream of racing, he took out a loan against his own life insurance to buy a seat in Formula 2. That was the first sign of the kind of man he was. Pragmatic, stubborn, and completely fearless in pursuit of a goal. He wasn't the most naturally gifted driver, but he was precise, methodical, and brutally analytical. While others drove on instinct, Lauda broke things down like an engineer, testing endlessly, measuring fuel loads, tweaking car balance, and memorizing data. His dedication caught the eye of Formula One teams. After a stint with March and BRM, Ferrari, desperate for revival, took a gamble on him in 1974. It would be one of the smartest decisions in the team's history. When Lauda arrived at Ferrari, the team was in chaos.
But Lauda battles on with the tires shredding itself to pieces, ignoring
The car was unreliable, and morale was low. But Lauda didn't complain. He got to work. He spent endless hours with engineers, dissecting every weakness of the Ferrari cars. His feedback was so technical that even Ferrari's veteran mechanics were stunned. The media nicknamed Lauda the computer. By 1975, the results spoke for themselves. Lauda dominated, winning 5 races and securing his first Formula One World Championship. He was a new kind of driver, cold, calculated, unemotional. Every move he made seemed deliberate, every decision logical. He was the antithesis to the wild, charming, party-loving British driver.
What's your name?
James Simon Wallace Hunt.
James Hunt. Hunt was everything Lauda wasn't: spontaneous, flamboyant, and reckless. Together, they became the perfect rivalry: discipline versus chaos, machine versus man. And as the 1976 season began, Lauda was unstoppable. By mid-season, he led by more than 25 points, until the day the fire came. August 1st, 1976, Nürburgring, Germany. The Green Hell, 14 miles long, over 170 corners, no room for error, and barely any safety barriers. That morning, the drivers held a meeting. The weather was unpredictable. Some parts of the track were wet, others bone dry. Lauda stood up and told them,
I called this meeting because, as all you drivers know, the Nürburgring is the most stupid, barbaric, outdated, and dangerous track in the world.
"It's too dangerous. We shouldn't race today."
All those in favor of racing?
But the others voted against him, and being a man of logic and fairness, Lauda accepted the decision.
Welcome to the Nürburgring, the most dangerous circuit on the season calendar.
He got into his car. On the second lap, something went wrong. A suspected rear suspension failure sent his Ferrari off at the fast kink, spearing into the barrier at high speed. It bounced back onto the track, was struck by another car, and exploded into flames. Fuel gushed everywhere. The fire engulfed the cockpit, and Lauda's helmet came off on impact. His face was exposed to the fire. Brett Lunger, Guy Edwards, Harold Ertel, and Arturo Merzario stopped their own cars, jumped into the flames, and dragged Lauda out. His body was burned, and he suffered life-threatening lung damage from inhalation. At the hospital, a priest was called to give him the last rites. He later said he saw the priest and knew what that meant, and recalled telling the priest, in his head, to piss off. He slipped into a coma, and the world prepared to mourn him. But Niki Lauda had no intention of dying. While doctors fought to save him, Lauda watched the world move on. From his hospital bed, wrapped in bandages, he knew Hunt's victory at the German Grand Prix had already trimmed his lead. And 2 weeks later, John Watson won in Austria, keeping the pressure on. And that's when something inside him snapped. He decided to return. Not next year, not next month, now. Just 42 days after being pulled from that burning wreck, Lauda appeared at the Italian Grand Prix in Monza. His face was swollen and bandaged, his wounds still raw. When he pulled on his helmet, blood seeped from the dressings under it. He still raced, And not just raced, he finished fourth, against the fastest drivers in the world. It was one of the most miraculous comebacks in sports history. Fans couldn't believe it. Drivers couldn't comprehend it. But for Lauda, it wasn't about bravery. It was about taking control, about proving that the fire hadn't taken that away from him. And that set up one of the most dramatic championship finales Formula One would ever see. The 1976 season came down to one race, the Japanese Grand Prix at Fuji. Rain poured relentlessly. The track was flooded. Visibility was so bad, drivers could barely see beyond the next corner. Lauda, still recovering from his injuries, started cautiously. But just 2 laps in, he pulled into the pits and stepped out.
Getting out of the car. This is sensational.
My life means more to me than the championship, he said as he pulled into the pits and climbed out. He retired from the race. James Hunt continued through the storm, driving on pure adrenaline. He finished third, just enough to win the world championship. To the world, Hunt was the hero, the playboy who triumphed against all odds. But to many others, Lauda's choice was the real act of courage. He had faced death once and decided he wasn't going to gamble with it again. And while Hunt celebrated, Lauda quietly planned his redemption. 77 was Lauda's year of revenge. Ferrari gave him a new car. And Lauda, more focused than ever, drove with surgical precision. He won 3 races, stood on the podium 10 times, and secured his second world championship. Then, in true Lauda fashion, he did something shocking. With 2 races still left in the season, he quit Ferrari.
How much do you want to continue our relationship? Because I just won the world championship. They said nothing. What do you mean? No, I'm leaving. We're leaving. Are you crazy?
He was tired of politics, tension, and Enzo Ferrari's temper. He left while on top, coldly, decisively, like a man who didn't need anyone's approval. He joined Brabham the following year under Bernie Ecclestone's leadership, driving the radical BT46B fan car. It won on debut at the Swedish Grand Prix, and was then withdrawn after 1 race amid political pressure. The FIA later moved to prevent similar designs, and the win stood. By 1979, Lauda had had enough. He retired saying, "I'm tired of driving around in circles." He walked away from Formula One and went back to his business roots, starting his own airline.
After retiring from racing to start in this kind of business.
Lauda Air. For a while, it looked like his racing story was finally over, but destiny wasn't finished with him yet. 3 years later, his airline was in the red, and cash was tight. Running an airline wasn't easy, and Lauda needed money. But there was another reason he returned. He missed the challenge. So in 1982, Niki Lauda made his second comeback, this time with McLaren. Many fans thought it was a mistake. He was 33, older, scarred, and even McLaren's backers insisted on a 4-race escape clause in his contract. But within 3 races, he proved everyone wrong, winning the Long Beach Grand Prix. The fire hadn't taken his edge, it had sharpened it. 2 years later, he faced one of the toughest opponents of his career, his own teammate, Alain Prost. Prost was younger, faster, and technically brilliant, but Lauda had experience and unshakable mental strength. Their battle in 1984 went down to the final race in Portugal. Lauda didn't need to win.
Niki Lauda trying to get up ahead and into the points and to preserve his chance of getting the world.
He just needed enough points. He finished second, taking his 3rd world championship by half a point.
Is the world champion of 1984.
The narrowest margin in F1 history, a title not won by speed alone, but by intellect and consistency, the essence of Niki Lauda. Lauda retired for good in 1985, leaving behind a legacy that stretched far beyond trophies. 3 world titles, 25 wins, 54 podiums, and something even greater, respect. He later returned to F1 in management roles, first as a consultant at Ferrari, then running Jaguar as team principal and head of Ford's Premier Performance Division, and eventually as the non-executive chairman of Mercedes. Lauda was pivotal in bringing Lewis Hamilton to Mercedes for 2013, working alongside Ross Brawn and Toto Wolff. He wasn't a corporate man. He was blunt, brutally honest, and allergic to nonsense. But people listened because he had earned the right to speak that way. His signature red cap wasn't vanity. It hid the scars from 1976 and symbolized everything he'd endured. Even decades later, fans never forgot what that hat represented: survival, resilience, and a defiance of fate. When Lauda passed away in 2019, the F1 world fell silent.
Get in there, Lewis. That one's for Niki, mate. That one is for Niki.
Lewis Hamilton called him a bright light in my life. Toto Wolff said he was irreplaceable. They were right. There was no one like Niki Lauda. He once said, "A lot of people criticize Formula One as an unnecessary risk. But what would life be like if we only did what was necessary?" He lived by that idea. He wasn't fearless. He simply refused to be ruled by fear.